Beautiful.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Kim. Dear my friends and colleagues from all over the world, and thank you for joining us for the NEO User Forum. For an hour, I'm going to speak about something related to the implant. By the way, as a dentist, all of you know that dentists are high-risk professional from the COVID-19 transmission disease, right? So I'm very worried about your health. So please stay and work safe while you work with the patient. Okay? And also these days it's not easy to work with all this personal protective equipment like facial mask and the face shield. Even it's not easy to communicate with the patient because I have to wear all day long the facial mask, right? So I think you're all the same as me. Okay, so about an hour, I'm going to speak about the screw mechanics. So understanding screw mechanics help to reduce the mechanical complication of implant while patient using, right? So let's get in. Okay, so we all know that implant dentistry is not a trouble-free. We live and fight with all these problems, right? Sometimes patients come with a broken implant and fracture of the screw and the fracture of the abutment, right? So let's talk about these mechanical issues today, okay? So I'm gonna bring one of the article that I like, okay? So this is kind of old article which published 2012, right? And it's about the mechanical problems of full mouth restoration such as hybrid restoration. So author used and investigate to check the Straumann and the Noble Biocare Brennermark implant, okay? So it's covered with the full mouth restoration. Okay, and they found the problem rates are about 19.7% at the 5-year and screw fracture, right? And also they found about 40% at the 10-year. So this is study of 10-year cumulative study of mechanical problems. But as you see, once it has a problem at 5 years and it became double at 10 years in any issues, any problems, okay? So at the end, if you see it, the complication-free rate is about 5 years, is about 31%. But in 10 years, it became 11%. So if it's safe at 5 years, it doesn't mean it's gonna be problemless in 10 years. So by the time goes, the problem and the risk became higher than before. So that's why we have to do the periodic follow-up check for the implant patient. Okay? Well, what kind of implant are you using? Okay? Easily we divide it to the external or internal, right? By the way, I don't like those classification. I think it's better to divide it. I think it's better to divide the implant with the friction fit or non-friction fit connection. So most of external implants are non-friction fit connection, and most of internal implants are friction fit implant. By the way, some of the externals are not non-friction, and some of the internal is not friction, right? But anyway, I'm going to divide it to the external, internal today, okay? So external is similar to the beer or soju in Korea. And internal is something similar to the wine. That's what I explained, because you're going to need some special instrument to drink wine, right? So I think internal is more specific if you compare to the external connection implant. Well, if you think about the force transmission, that's the different mechanics. So in external, as you see, if you give the force right here, then this is a rotating point. So this is the center to rotate, right? But if internal, it's against the power, against the force, it can register from the internal area inside of the implant. So it registers more the force in internal connection implant, right? So that's the two implants are different mechanics. So that's what we have to think about. And this is another article that shows if all these different implants has a different failure mode. Okay, so if you expect have some easier problem to solve, you may need to choose certain implant. If not, if you want to choose less problem implant, but once it happened, it became severe. So it's all about weakest point. So you have to understand implant mechanics if you want to choose the implant that you want. Okay, so they have different, all these implants have a different failure mode. Okay, maybe external implant, you may experience more about screw loosening, right? But internal, you may experience less on screw loosening, but problem is you may experience more about abutment fracture and implant tearing because they have different failure mode. Okay, so this is what it is. And once you screw down on the external or internal, the weakest part of external is the screw, abutment screw, right? And weakest part of the implant on the internal implants are this area where the connections are, right? So that's the different. So you have to understand different failure mode if you want to choose the implant that you use. Okay, so most of the time we're using the conical seal design implant these days. Well, I'm using conical seal design most of the time. I'm still using the external. I'm using the IT type, like a non-submerged type internal connection as well. But I'm going to focus on conical seal design. Okay, so this is a picture when you put the abutment inside of the implant. Okay, if you place non-hex, if you place the hex abutment, then you may find these two contacts on the inside of the implant. The upper part is the abutment, and lower part is the hex. So if you use the non-hex abutment, it means you only have one contact on top of the implant, right? So this is the picture of internal connection with the hex abutment. Okay. So screw fracture because of lateral force. So once you have force applied in here in the occlusal surface, and it's lever like this. So this is the center of rotation. So this is the weakest point. So although restoration became like rotate like this, against like this, then it happened with the screw fracture, abutment fracture, and fixture tearing or fracture happened. Okay, so we have to think about reducing the lateral force because this part is the weakest point of the internal connection implant. Okay, so this is another picture. This is very important. I want to ask you to focus on this picture. Okay, so once you screw down with the abutment in and screw down, this will happen. The upper part of the screw thread will touch the implant. As you see here, red arrows, right? And the lower part will not touch. Okay, so this is the space. So the upper part of the thread is touching, and lower part of the thread is open. By the way, what's going to happen if it touches lower as well? Well, then the screw will not get in. The screw will not go in. It means you cannot screw down, right? So that's why all the screws in the world have same mechanics. So this this is the part touch on the top, and the lower part will be open. Will leave the space. Okay, so that's important. I hope you remember this picture until end. Okay. Okay, I've tried many abutments and abutment from all these different company and from the third party to the IS implant. Okay, some of them fit, some of them not. Okay, and maybe you will think you have heard about the interchangeable abutment, right? But that's not the thing. If you think about fit itself, does not have too much meaning. Each company use different material. Also, did they have different range of errors? So I don't recommend to mix and match implant and abutment. Okay, so please use the proper abutment from same manufacturer of your implant. Okay, so that's my suggestion. Here is another interesting study which was done in Korea. Okay, and they used the Astra implant, 136 single implant, right? So they used the anterior, premolar, and molar. And this is 5-year cumulative survival. They investigate 5-year cumulative survival rate of this 136 single implant. Okay, and they found 12 of them were lost. Okay, and also 8% of the implant had a coronal fracture. Okay, and the 47 of 114, so it's about 41% of implant in the posterior region showed post-loading complications. So fracture of fixture, abutment, and the screw loosening. So it's a lot, right? Almost 40% of your implant have mechanical problem after 5 years. I think you need to change the office, right? So you need to move the office in this situation. But think about this study, they use all the abutment, use the cast abutment. So it means casting material is not suitable for the Astra implant. So you have to think about the diameter of the implant, also the material of the abutment for the longevity, right? Okay, so this is my main question. What's the implant? So they have like a Wikipedia and many different journals and academy. Like they decide to describe what the dental implants are, right? But for me, dental implant is a screw. Okay, so of course you may need to choose the cylinder type implant, but most of implants that we are using now is a screw, right? Also, this screw is locked down, like you can tighten or you can connect the prosthesis by the screw. So implants are the screw which can connect the screw. So it's better to understand the screw mechanics for dental implant. Okay? You know why screw get loose? Okay, let's talk about it. So once you screw down, put the abutment in, and once you screw down, you need to give the torque, right, to the abutment screw. So it means right after you apply the torque, the force that comes with say preload, right? It's similar. It's same to the clamping force, which is like a holding force, right? So if you give the torque to the abutment screw, the preload and clamping force happens inside of the implant, right? Then, if joint separating force is bigger than clamping force, then screw get loose. But where comes from the joint separating force? Okay, that's we call it settling effect. Something else, embedment relaxation. So I wrote down what all these things are. So screw is tightened by applying torque. Okay, they apply the torque, develops a force within the screw called preload. And as the screw tightened, it elongates, producing tension, right? And elastic recovery of the screw pulls the two parts together, so creating clamping force, right? Okay, the clamping force versus joint separating force, which attempts to separate the screw joint. The screw loosening occurs when the joint separating force acting on the screw joint and greater than the clamping forces holding the screw unit together. Okay, so let's talk about embedment relaxation. Okay, any metal, okay, so how carefully machined an implant surface is slightly rough, microscopically. So settling occurs at the rough spots or flattened under load. So since they are only contacting surfaces when the initial tightening torque is applied. So as a result, the torque necessary to remove a screw is less than the torque initially used to place the screw. So that's why screw get loose by the settling effect and embedment relaxation. Okay, so let's think about it. If you tighten it too hard, what's going to happen? Okay, so here I have a case. I placed the neobiotic implant, external type implant, mini implant, not the regular implant. I put the torque about like a 20 Newton centimeter and screw stripped. And suddenly I lost, the abutment was lost from the retention. Okay, so if you give excessive force, you lose the clamping force. It means you lose the preload. Okay, so we are think about 70 to 75% of yield strength to tighten the screw. That's the proper torque to give the screw. Okay, so don't tighten it too hard. Okay, so you have to think about yield strength. Okay, so proper screw tightening is we tighten 10 minutes after initial torque application. So don't use your hand wrench, okay? Every time you tighten the screw, use, like for the final restoration, when you tighten the screw, you need to use the mechanical torque wrench, okay? That's the way you give the proper torque to the implant and the implant restoration. Okay, so proper yield strength to give the abutment screw is about 70 to 75%. Okay, and excessive forces cause slipping between threads of the screw and threads of the bone, resulting in a loss of preload. Okay, so you have to use a mechanical wrench, torque wrench, and give the 75% of yield strength to the abutment screw. Okay, this is also important. What's going to happen right after you tighten this abutment screw? Okay, so if you give the torque to the abutment screw in proper range, then torque reduces immediately after torque applied. Okay, and it reduced until 5 hours. So once you tighten it, it became loose, the preload by the time. Okay, so that's important. And what if you tighten again and again and again and again? Okay, someone tested about 200 times. Okay, we don't open and tighten it, retighten it this much. But this article suggests do not frequently use the torque wrench and open and back, open and back. Okay, so it's better to change the abutment screw if you tighten or reconnect, open and tighten it too often. Okay, so preload fall following tightening due to the plastic deformation of the screw and the torsional recovery of the screw and the cyclic loading, like chewing and biting, right? Also plastic deformation of joint component itself, like let's say abutment and the connection part. And of course, overload is one of the reasons to lose the preload. Okay, here, this is very famous article which published in COIR. Okay, they use the 3 types of the implant and the 5 different type of abutment. So they use the external, author used the external implant, right, with the hex abutment. Okay, and second is the internal abutment, internal connection implant with the non-hex abutment and the solid abutment. So hex abutment and the non-hex abutment. And also they use the submerged type implant. They use the solid abutment and the octa abutment, like a friction fit abutment. Okay, and once they tighten it with the hand, right, 5 Newton centimeter, and they tighten harder by the hand, 10 Newton centimeter, and every 10 minutes they tighten it with the torque length, proper torque length, 30 Newton centimeter. So what's going to happen, right? If you see the red one, on top here, this is the internal connection implant with the hex abutment. So as you see here, from 30 Newton once, right, to the second, still the abutment goes in, like let's say thinking, so vertical movement, so it goes down, right? Even it happened to the external, but it's not that much, right? Because that's the joint is the metal touch the metal, right? So if you use the internal connection implant, you have to tighten it twice at least in 10 minutes apart. So once you tighten with the mechanical torque wrench with the 30 Newton centimeter or manufacturer suggested Newton centimeter, then wait 10 minutes because we know the preload will go down, right? So after 10 minutes, you tighten it again with the proper torque length, okay? So that's the way you properly treating the abutment screw when you connect the restoration to the implant. There are similar studies that they have like a similar results. Okay, so what's going to happen if abutment's sinking down? Is it going to change the occlusion? Well, maybe, but most of the time, it's going to lead the abutment screw loosening or abutment problems, such as abutment screw loosening and screw fracture or abutment fracture. Okay, but also, is it going to also happen in the vertical? Sometimes it's going to be oblique, right? So that's we have to think about when we talk about the thinking, right? So vertical displacement of the abutment. So proper way to treat the abutment screw is adequate torque with the mechanical torque length and with repeated tightening. So this is my treatment protocol to do the adequate torquing and repeated tightening of my restoration. So once I made the impression, I send the case to the lab. Okay, I ask them to make abutment and also the framework or cupping, right? And at the same time, I ask them to make a temporary crown. So once my abutment goes in patient mouth, I don't take it out, right? So I just do the retightening and retightening. And I'm loading with the temporary crown first, and after a while, I'm taking out the temporary crown like a natural dentition. Then I'm tightening again. Then at that time, I made a pickup impression of coping or framework. Then send the case to the lab again, and I get back for the final restoration. So that's the way I treat the patient. So let's see another case. A patient will need multiple implant restoration and upper and lower posteriors. Okay, so I have too much to talk about this case, but I'm gonna skip it today for restoration part. So I made the framework and coping, right? And at the same time, I asked them to make a temporary crown to my lab technician. Okay, so I'm loading with this. Of course, I'm frequently retightening the abutment screw whenever patient comes. Then at the end, like a few months later, I make a pickup impression of this framework and framework and cuppings Then I send the case to the lab again, and I get back the final restoration. I cement this restoration. Okay, the other side I did same. Okay, for this purpose, I don't remove the abutment from patient mouth. So once I get it, I put it in. So I'm not gonna remove it. So I'm leave it and I'm tightening it again and again. So this is final result of that patient. Also, this is what I call it. This is a panoramic radiograph of the patient. Previously, I showed you. Okay, so can you see the movie clip here? Well, restoration is moving. So what do you expect? Maybe screw loosening, or sometimes you may experience the screw fracture like this. So there are many out there in the market about the screw retriever instrument. But the key point is you don't want to damage the inside of the implant, right? Inside of the thread, or you don't want to damage the connection. So that's why you're going to need something like a plum like this to cover the abutment, to cover the connection, right? Sometimes you will see it's easy to remove the broken screw, sometimes not, right? So I'm dividing the situation like this. There are two different situations when you see the abutment screw fracture. Okay, it's simple fracture. First one is a simple screw fracture without thread damage. So it means you have any instrument like an Explorer, right? Then you can use the anti-clockwise rotation of a broken screw. Then you can easily retrieve the broken screw from the implant. Okay, and I'm using the number 125C Explorer Sharp and brand new Explorer. And I found it's easier case. You can use it to retrieve the broken screw. And second part, I couldn't find the pictures and I couldn't find the movie clip of what I'm using, the low speed round contra angle round burr. So I'm using number 6 round burr, carbide round burr to connect the contra angle without you paddling. You just holding on your hand and put it in the implant and touching the broken abutment screw, and you give the anti-rotation, then it come out, right? So that's the easier part and happy end, right? And also, you have to think about because fracture with the thread damage. So it means the broken part of the screw, on top of the broken part of the screw, the threads are damaged. So you may need to give the torque or force to get rid of it, right? So then you're gonna need some special instrument. So I'm gonna introduce few of them I'm using, right? So this is screw remover kit from the Neobiotech. I love it, right? So I'm gonna talk about step by step. The first instrument that I wanna introduce is the claw instrument. It has 2 legs, right? Like a claw, and also have a different diameters. Depends on different abutment diameter, right? So you put the guide on top of the implant, then use the counterclockwise rotation with a slow speed. They recommend to have a 50 RPM, but sometimes you just need to use it by hand. Okay, it goes in with the guide to the implant, right? Like this. Then you place the claw drill to retrieve the abutment screw. Okay, so rotation with the fingers are okay. Even if you want to use the engine, then go slow with the 50 RPM. Okay, so they have different connections, right? They have different guides to the different implant, for the different implant. So once you place the guide like this, so it has fit the connection, right? So use the claw drill with a slow speed, then screw will go up. Right? So it catches with the 2 legs, right? Because the abutment screw fracture, any part have a rough surface. So as you see here, use the anti-clockwise rotation then screw will come out. So you see it's moving up like this. Okay, so they have a different reverse drill and screw remover. So this is step 2. Okay, so if it's not working with the crown drill, so you need to make indentation in the screw, broken screw, then you take it out with the screw remover. Okay, so you make indentation on top of the broken screw. Then you catch with the screw remover. So it's holding because the indentation on top of the abutment screw. Okay, let's see another movie clip. If you have a broken screw like here, you place the guide to the connect to the implant. Then you make indentation and broken screw. And you remove the guide. Then it catches with the remover drill, reverse drill. Okay, so drilling into the screw. So you have to think about these protocols. Use new drills if possible, and reverse direction. So rotate with the anti-clockwise, counterclockwise rotation, and 1 millimeter drilling, and use the lower stop to make indentation. Okay, so you have to use the instrument under the copious water spray, and also you have to give the vertical pressure only. Okay, and remove it with the contra angle handpiece. Okay, so these are the protocols to use the step 2, right? So you make indentation and holding and catching and remove the abutment screw like this. Okay, so this is cases. This one is a case from one of my colleagues, Professor Dr. Jo Young-jin, and he experienced 3 times of the abutment screw on the internal implant, and finally he removed and replaced the dental implant long time ago, and he haven't experienced any problem of internal implant. I think internal implant is very picky when there is some mechanical problem. Okay, so these are the pictures from another my friends, Dr. Kim Do-young, and this is a abutment fracture case. He has many of them. Okay, so have you ever experienced the abutment fracture of internal connection implant? You know, most frequently it happens on the first molar on mandible. I show you why. Okay, because of a medial-distal dimension is wider than any other area. Sometimes we think about placing 2 implants instead of 1 implant for 1 missing tooth because there is too much medial-distal space, right? Well, we cannot change the medial-distal space because that's the part that we have to cover. So we have to think about buccolingual dimension. Okay, so try to make crown occlusal table smaller. Okay, to reducing the lateral forces. Okay, so this is one of my case, and I made crown like this. I try to reduce the buccolingual dimension in terms of occlusal table. Okay, so this is how it look at the end. Okay, at a time, long time ago, this is what we used to do. We call it hygienic type of restoration. But I don't do this anymore, right? Nobody, I think, in the world does this anymore. So, but these are these yellow circles, the implant crown that I made for the patient, for my patient. I tried to make a smaller crown or smaller restoration for my patient because I want to reduce the lateral forces. Well, mostly we're using these three types of the connection: external or internal submerged, like a tissue level implant. So we call it in neobiotech, they have EB, external, IS, internal submerged, and IT, something similar to the ITI type. Okay. If force apply to the occlusion, like a crown of the dental implant, okay, and you see force transmitted, right, rectangular to the bone and to the implant. So distance from here and here, if you compare, this submerged type has much longer distance because it placed the deeper, right? So the force and rotation center will top on the ITI type, which is favorable for force transmission, right? So if you think about to placing single implant on the lower posterior, maybe you need to think about to choose this type of implant better than this, right? And this is our suggestion as well. Also, diameter of the implants are important. So if you replacing the premolar, you can use a regular, like a 4.0 diameter implant. Okay? If you are replacing the molars and posteriors, then think about at least use more than 4.5 diameter implant. Okay? So that's the way you are safer from the abutment fracture and the screw fracture. Okay, so for single molar missing, this is my suggestion. So avoid use of internal conical screw design if you have enough space for the, like in terms of occlusal clearance. Okay, and use wider implant, at least bigger than 4.5 diameter implant. Okay, and also you have to reduce the cantilever in any direction. We all worry about the distal cantilever all the time, but sometimes medial cantilever can cause the mechanical problems of the implant. So you have to think about the medial, distal, or any direction, even it's the buccal or lingual direction of cantilever. So you have to reduce the cantilever to reduce the problem. Okay, and also occlusal adjustment and follow-up check is important. So narrower occlusal table and reduce the cusp inclination to decrease the lateral force of the implant. So that's important. Well, so let me show you a different story. Okay, so as you see here, this canine here, number 13, is the implant, and number 23 is the implant as well. Can you see the difference? Maybe this yellow arrow looks a little darker, and you can see the shadow on the gum, on the soft tissue, right? So number 13 is the zirconia abutment and the zirconia crown, and number 23 is the prefabricated abutment, so metal crown, metal abutment, and the PFM crown, right? So that's the difference. So we use a different material for number 13 and number 23, right? So you see the gray shadow underneath of number 23. Okay. Well, human eyes can catch any soft tissue not less thicker than 2 millimeter, then you can notice what the materials are. Okay. Also, the zirconia is less attractive to the plaque, so it's good for the gingival health as well. Also, the zirconia abutments were reliable in the anterior lesion from the both biological and mechanical points of view, and for the anterior. Okay. Well, this is a case from Dr. Jonghwa Kim, who presented last week. Okay. He used the zirconia abutment and zirconia crown, and had a screw like a proximal contact loss. He wants to fix the proximal contact loss that he wants to retrieve. Then abutment were broke. Okay, so what's going to happen is the zirconia abutment moving inside of the implant. So that's the horrible thing, right? That may damage the inside of the implant. So with that, we have to worry about. Even in external case, zirconia abutment can broke, right? So this is one of the case that I published. with Professor Lee Myung-jun from Seoul National University. Okay, so he removed all the broken abutment, and he made the impression like this, and we scan on the model table scanner. Then we send the case to the lab, and he scanned the broken part of the abutment. So as you see here, this is the empty part, parts that we lost, right? Then we draw on top of the broken parts. Then we come up with the new titanium abutment and new zirconia abutment. Okay, and we adjusted on the model, and we tried it in patient mouth like this with the old restoration. So we haven't changed the restoration, we just changed the abutment because the abutment were broke, right? So this is what we delivered, and we published in JPD. So if you want to see the details, you need to go to the JPD, and you can find the article. Okay, because we have many problems of zirconia abutment. We use these days we're using frequently about the link abutment and the socket type abutment. Okay, so this is one of my case. Patient experienced the root fracture twice. So I decided to go for the implant for number 11. So light central incisor. Okay. So this is the picture after final restoration. As you see here, I have a hybrid abutment which has link abutment. So metal touches metal to the abutment like a connection. And on top of that, on top of the link, I place the zirconia core. Then on top of it, I cement the zirconia crown. So this is link abutment. You can see the all different direction of my abutment like this. Then try it in patient mouth and cement it in the inpatient mouth. So this is hybrid abutment, which will give you better aesthetics in terms of if you have less than 2 millimeters soft tissue on the gum, then you can use and you can choose this type of abutment. The problems are this type of the abutment also can have many mechanical problems. So these pictures are from the Professor Park Ji-man, who worked in the Yonsei University in Korea. And he used it in the posterior, and patients come with the restoration and broken abutment. Okay, it's working for the anterior, but if you think about to use the posteriors, I don't recommend to use the posterior too often. Okay, even for the anterior, it can break if you have to alterate the link. If you have to grind or cut the link, then it's better not to use because you can easily lose of retention. Okay, this is my case, and this is one of my senior of dental school. He came with a broken, anterior restoration. I placed 2 implants. Okay, I give him immediate restoration, and these implants were okay. But this implant was tilted to the distal to get the initial stability. Okay, but by the way, I made a titanium abutment and zirconia abutment for this my senior patient. Okay, and this is I overwrapped the hybrid abutment and the titanium abutment. So you see the hybrid abutment is bulky on the subgingival area. Okay, and this is a final restoration of this. But this patient has thick gingiva, thick soft tissue. So you cannot see that much of difference of using hybrid abutment or titanium abutment. So don't try to use for every patient of hybrid abutment. If possible, in case that patient have less than 2 millimeter thickness of the soft tissue, then you can use it for the anterior area only. Okay. So hybrid abutment, the titanium link and zirconia core, we don't know too much about it so far. So only consider to use it in a limited case, such as anterior case when patients have not thick gingiva, right? And also, I asked my lab technician design first, the abutment design first. Then I overlap the link. If I don't need to change anything, then I'm going to go for the hybrid abutment. So if I have to cut off or if I have to grind it off the abutment, then I I ask my lab technician, don't do that. I'm just going to use the titanium abutment. Okay, so that's the way I do. Okay, so today we were discussed about the screw mechanics. So I hope you understand screw mechanics. Those are basic, but those are the knowledge that you have to live all the time as a dentist if you're treating the implant. Okay? Well, I emphasize adequate torquing and repeated tightening for the implant. So the way I do is I tighten it and put the temporary crown in and ask the patient come again about a few weeks later. Then I tighten it again and I made a pickup impression and send the case to the lab for the final restoration. So I wait until thinking, right? So I don't remove the abutment once I put in. So that's the way I treat the implant these days. Okay, so I also talk about the vertical displacement and settle down of the abutment. So it's the same. You tighten again. 10 minutes later, you tighten it again. Right? So that's the important thing. Well, can you change the screen? Okay. So internal connection in single molar replacement is not super recommended. Okay, so you have to think about the non-submerged, like a non-submerged type, like a tissue level implant for single molar replacement if you have enough occlusal clearance. Okay, and also we have to think about occlusal clearance, abutment selection, and design for the anteriors and posterior. Okay, well, you need to have delicate occlusal adjustment for the implant. Okay. Also, I always leave the bite mousse registration right after delivery of the implant. That's the way you can observe the occlusal change of dental implant. Okay. Well, as I told you, the implant dentistry is not a trouble-free. Okay. Unfortunately, we have to live and we have to fight with all these mechanical problems like a screw fracture and screw loosening and abutment fracture and implant tearing. Okay, so you have to give the proper information to the patient. You may experience some mechanical, some biological problem later on. That's why you need to show up for the follow-up check or periodically. Okay, this is one of very famous article from Dr. Goodacre. So these are one of a series of articles, and he investigated. He found all the problems of fixed dental restoration and implant restoration. So these are the part 2. If you see it, screw problems, okay, prosthetic screw loosening, abutment screw loosening, and prosthetic screw fracture, and all, etc. Okay, you may experience more than like 20%. Let's say, okay, 20%, right? So if you have a problem, implant problem, if that's the mechanical thing, then one out of 5 are the screw and also the implant mechanical problem. Okay, so you have to consider these mechanical problems as big an essential part that you have to think about when you're treating the dental implant. Okay, so my clinic, the name of my clinic is Smart Dental. Okay, so you have to be smart to treat the implant dentistry if you want to get rid of the mechanical issues. Okay, so that's it for today, and that was my last slide for today. And thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for joining us. But before I close, don't forget to subscribe this channel because we have different programs and the different lectures regularly. So that's an easier way to connect with us. So please subscribe this channel before you leave. Okay. Did you have any question? Okay, so thank you for being with me. Okay, I hope you have a safe work and safe with by yourself and for your family and for your patient. Okay, so stay safe and stay healthy. Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna come back later on. Thank you.